your guest tonight. You see, I heard James Gilliland tell someone at his ranch that he believes that Peter Davenport still works for the U.S. government. James Gilliland was saying he's invited Peter Davenport to come out to his ranch and observe UFO Skywatch some night many, many times, but Peter's refused all attempts to get him to come to Gilliland's sanctuary and observe UFOs, which routinely fly over the ranch. We heard from him recently, and so he would like that answered. He's also suspicious that you were a Russian language interpreter for the U.S. government and thinks you still work for the U.S. government and dispense disinformation.
Yeah.
That's Mike in Auburn, Washington. So
there are a lot of targets there I could take pot shots at.
Go right ahead.
Let me start with the government angle. I do not work for the U.S. government. I would not work for the U.S. government. They are the adversaries. I almost said bad guys. I'll refrain from using that term, but they are my adversaries in the field of UFO work. Mm-hmm. In years past, in programs past, in incautious moments, I have probably stated or used the term lie, which has a hard edge to it, of course, in referring to the U.S. government's position on UFOs. I think a more accurate representation is that they are simply not addressing the issue. They are simply not sharing with the American people, who pay their bills, of course, and for whom they work as public officials. They're not sharing this information with the American public. I would like to know why. That takes us into a whole nother...
Well, it does. And, Peter, the only explanation I've ever heard is that the U.S. government concluded, along with other governments in the world, that whatever these are, and they don't deny their existence, they simply say they're not a threat to U.S. national security. And I find that worth a chuckle or two, because if things are traversing our airspace and we don't know what they are and we can't stop them, and that does not constitute a threat to national security, then what the hell does?
Yeah. One of the things we haven't touched on tonight with any of our guests is how many airports, how many control zones, how many terminal control areas or Class B airspace these objects went through in violation of the Federal Aviation Regulations.
With you all the way, my friend. But
clearly a risk.
Back for a second to Gillen. I don't want to get away without having you answer that. You know, he makes incredible claims. He's got some incredible photographs and evidence, and I did interview him not long ago, and he apparently has invited you many times, and so why not?
Well, I've been invited down there. There have been many times in the late 90s, I was serving as executor for a late ONS estate back in New Jersey. You may remember I actually did a program or two from New Jersey. I was very busy back then.
I recall.
And many of my colleagues, many of my friends from Seattle were going down to the ranch. It's just something that I could not fit into my schedule. And I was willing to leave it to other people to go down, look at the evidence, see what people were seeing. I can't rule out that they might have been seeing or might have seen a few UFOs down there. It's quite possible.
UFOs. The witnesses are impressive.
Everywhere.
Well, maybe what they should do is what everybody else does and call you up.
Mm-hmm.
And so there you are. Okay, I wanted to get that answered. A lot of people are asking that question. He's made it very public, apparently, you know, that he's invited you down there. And
right. I think there have been suggestions from that camp that I've worked for the NSA or the CIA or the FBI or the alphabet soup of government agencies. And if that is their belief, I would invite them to come forward with their evidence so it can be analyzed and tested and so on and so forth. It's simply not true, just not true. And moreover, I would cite the fact, what purpose would there be for me to work for the U.S. government in, I've put, I think, about 38,000 UFO reports on the National UFO Reporting Center website. So if the government's objective is to cover up the UFO phenomenon, that would be an awfully bizarre act on the part of somebody in sympathy with that effort.
Well, it would seem so, but I mean, they use the word disinformation, and
well, that's why I have guests on. I invite them on to speak their own piece. That's very important for me, so people don't think it is just I who is representing these things. They can hear Sue Watson and Stacey Rhodes and Dorothy from Las Vegas. And they know that these people they can just hear in their voices that they're sincere.
Why does ufology have such a tendency to self-immolate?
I don't know. It's part of the reason I work alone, Art, because it cuts down on the personnel problems, of course. Although I find I'm arguing with myself more and more, talking to myself, even though there's just one of me here.
Well, there is, though. There's so much division, there's so much controversy, and just downright meanness sometimes between those who are in a small chuckle field anyway, and so they hurt their own cause. I've wondered about this since the first year I began covering this sort of thing.
It is troublesome to me, too, and I find I oftentimes just withdraw from it because I am so busy that I do not have the time and therefore don't have the desire to get involved in some kind of internecine battle in the ranks of ufology. All I do is provide a conduit for people who believe they may have seen an unusual event, possibly UFO related, to send that information to a facility where it will be preserved and where it will be made available anonymously in the public forum.
In all these years, Peter, do we know anything more about the motivations of those who show themselves to us?
I don't believe I do. Perhaps there are other UFO investigators out there who do, but it is more a mystery to me what is going on in ufology than it was 12 years ago when I took over the hotline. I have no idea what's going on.
So it's caused more questions than it has provided answers.
That's what I see from my vantage point. The only focus that I've seen occur is in the minds of serious investigators focusing on the U.S. government and its motives in all of this.
Yes.
And I will be honest, it's a very, very difficult thing for me to talk about without a great deal of cautious preparation. But what worries me more than anything else, is the possibility of cooperation in some form that we cannot even imagine between these objects, these presumably alien creatures, and the U.S. government.
Indeed. Hold it right there. We will be back in just a moment. We'll take a break at the bottom of the hour from the high desert, the middle of the night. This is Coast to Coast AM.